70 people that in attendance.
Yeah. Nice. What? Dude. Are we going to have to go back on that? it's all good. Should we wait for them or not? Yeah, sounds good. What time is it? All right. Hello. There we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Intro to Mobile Development from us at Kloob. Yo. What the? What? Why is this here? Oh, you put it at the front? I put it at the back. Whatever. So what is this about? It will be about what is mobile development, what software do you need, and what tech stacks can you use. What it will not be about. It will not be gospel. We are figuring it out along the way ourselves. It will also not be how to make a mobile app because there are so many different ways to make a mobile app, and it will also not be why to make a mobile app because I think that is project dependent, and you have to come to that conclusion yourself. So, first question, what is mobile dev? I think most people have a general idea of what counts as mobile, but there may be some things that you take for granted but you don't see as mobile dev. So there's obviously the phone and tablets. So you have your iOS for iPhone, you have your iPad OS for iPads, you have Android, which is just generally just all of Android phones like Samsung, Google Pixels, all of those. There is this very fun thing though, because in 2019, Google banned Huawei specifically from ever using Google Play services. So Huawei had to make Harmony OS, which is their own offshoot brand of Android. And because of that, if you want to target Huawei phones specifically, you need to do something different. Because welcome to democracy or something. So here we go. Those are their those are their logos. You probably already know them. Except the Huawei one. Nobody knows the Huawei one. Who cares about the Huawei ones? But what also counts as mobile is watches. So stuff like an Apple Watch or a Samsung, what are they? Some Samsung Wears or whatever. So it's Watch OS for Apple Watches. It's called Wear OS. Very convenient for Android. Funnily enough, Huawei calls it Harmony OS as well. It is different. I don't know what's different. It's just called Harmony OS. And older versions of Huawei watches have what is known as Light OS because back then Android didn't have offshoot brand of Wear OS yet. So they had to make their own. I think it's a common theme with Huawei. And then lastly, there's the other section, which has been lumped into mobile as of recent. So stuff like CarPlay and Android Auto, which are for the automotive industry, which they're not as well developed yet as all of the other things on this list. They don't have a wide variety of like resources and blog posts, but if you mess around enough and try not to brick your car, you can get it working, I think. I know a couple senior designs last year did it. There's tvOS for Apple TVs, which is now officially supported by SwiftUI. And then there's also Android TV as well. And then, because Apple has to be Apple and they have to be new, we also have Vision OS for the Apple, what are they? The Vision Pros, there we go. For their AR VR that has an entirely separate design kit and everything. So have fun having a unified design for your app. So, now we talked about what counts as mobile. You can't really get started if you don't have what you need. So, what do you need? Oh, thank God, it did not show the Discord notification. The dev kit. So, you need Android Studio for Android. You basically don't have a way around that. You just need to download Android Studio because you get ADB, which is the Android debugger, which you can download separately, but generally is easier to use with Android Studio. It's graphical, it's a command line. And it is a fork of IntelliJ. That is a known fact. And you can actually download all of the Android Studio specific things in IntelliJ. And I'm assuming you all are students. You get a year free of JetBrains Student Pack per subscription if you just give them your UC email. Hint, hint, they also don't check if you're still enrolled as a student. So just keep that email with you and you'll get it for I'm on it right now. Anyway, so the other one you need is Xcode. And this is how you will always push to an iOS phone. Fun side note, if you want to push to an iOS phone, because you can do it with Android without anything else, you just need to figure out how to activate developer mode on your Android phone, which for most Android phones is really funny. You go to System, you go to Build Number, you tap it 7 times. Why 7? Who knows? But with Xcode, you have to do something more to push to a physical device. And that is one of 2 things. First, macOS is required. Wow, that is very laggy. Okay, we will not be doing that. macOS is required. You need a Mac. There is no way around that. They have been cracking down on virtualization and emulation and Hackintoshes and stuff like that, which is, you know, Apple tax. And speaking of Apple tax, to push to a phone, you need a developer account, and that costs you 100 smackaroons every year. Because, you know, Apple. So now that we know what we have, that is very laggy, what tech stack should we use? And this is where the whole nuance of mobile dev really comes out. Everything else before, you needed it one way or the other. If you were using, you'll see in a sec, if you were using any other tech stack, you still, at the end of the day, need Android and need Xcode to officially build to phones and stuff. And there are ways around it, but most of them, you just end up having to rely on cloud service providers. So, we kind of have a junction, a 3-way junction. Which method of mobile app development do you go? And we can talk about the first one. So there's 3. First is going native. I will explain in a sec what that means. The second is cross-platform. I will also explain in a sec what that means. Wow, that is waggy. And the third one is, why do mobile? Just do web. Anyway, so native is defined, I define it as using the quote native, or as some like to, in the industry like to call it, the blessed ways of doing things. So this is the blessed SDKs and the blessed toolkits for a given platform. For Android, this is stuff like Jetpack Compose and Kotlin. And for iOS, this is stuff like Swift and Swift UI. If you want to do legacy, you can do like Objective-C and UIKit as well. And so I kind of just went over this slide already, but for Apple, you have Swift UI and Swift UI and Objective-C and UIKit for legacy, and those are their logos. Really cool bird. And then for Android, you have Kotlin and Jetpack Compose. You also have the older version, which is Java and Android Views. And Jetpack Compose is a very recent addition to the Android space. So you may, if you've ever dabbled with mobile dev before, you might have seen the whole XML views debate of, is imperative UI better than declarative? And this is where, in my understanding, is where it starts. A lot of older versions of UI were XML based for the format, and you would imperatively update them. Now Jetpack Compose is a more declarative framework, so you work with a domain-specific language, and it's state management and UI in one place. Swift UI is also like that. UIKit is also more imperative. So you can kind of see industry trends of moving from imperative code to declarative code. We are on that pendulum swing again, for those who know the difference between object-oriented and functional programming. From a certain lens, they're the exact same thing. From another lens, they're completely opposite things. And if you say one is the other, they get really angry at you, and they write like 3 paragraphs on Stack Overflow. So we're currently in that pendulum swing back to functional is my read, but please correct me if I'm wrong. I spend too much time online, I don't see the sun. And there also are others. So welcome back to Huawei. They have ArcTS, which is their own custom language implementation transpiler on top of TypeScript that compiles for their OS, for Harmony OS. Technically, you can still use Kotlin and Jetpack Compose for Harmony OS because it's still Android at its very core, but I think the most blessed API, the blessed way of doing it now is ArcTS, ArcUI with Harmony OS, and they have their own IDE and everything. The file, this is what I don't get. The file extension is called ETS, and the language is ArcTS. I don't know where the E came from. So if you ever see ETS files online, that might be what you're looking at. So next, let's go over, that was native, and there are some downsides, which I guess I should cover, which is by going native per platform, you end up doubling work. You need to make the app for one platform in one language, and then make the app on the other platform in another language. You have this context switch of usually going between Kotlin and Swift. If you really want to do Huawei, also ArcTS. And the languages are similar. As someone who likes to dive deep into language, I can tell you they're pretty similar, but they are, at their fundamental core, fairly different. So there's a different context switch of like Swift runtime semantics of like arc and value semantics versus Kotlin's entire JVM-based object semantics and heap primitives. So there is also that context switch, and you will have to sometimes, if you end up doing one or the other, it may end up becoming more engineering development hours, or you're going to, instead of developing both on your own, you communicate with another engineer. And then there are fun things like, well, it works like this on my version, and it works like this on your version. Which one is the right version? And then you delegate to the designer, and they tell you you're both wrong. So that's always fun. So let's try to get rid of that whole two workflows for one app problem. And that's where cross-platform comes in. Some really smart people, smarter than me, have decided, why not just use one framework or one technology that targets multiple platforms? And this doesn't limit you to mobile. You can also target desktop with these platforms, or target web with these platforms as well, while targeting mobile. And there are some options to do that. The main one that we at Kloob use is Compose multi-platform with Kotlin multi-platform. A fun little tidbit about this one. It's also, in this slide, the youngest, technically. It came out, its first idea was Kotlin multi-platform mobile, or KMM, which came out in like 2015, 16? Somebody's going to double check me on that. But it didn't officially become stable or supported officially until like 2019, 2020. So it's technically the youngest on this list, and you'll see what I mean in a second. And it targets both Android, iOS, Mac OS, and desktop through other means. It also targets tvOS, watchOS, visionOS, and it also targets JVM for back-end uses, and it targets WASM for web. So you get the whole shebang from using Compose multi-platform and Kotlin multi-platform. But there are obviously trade-offs. Because it's the youngest, it has the smallest ecosystem, and you're probably going to run into a lot of bugs with just the inherent architecture and the inherent software itself. Stuff like visual glitches, or flickering, or like render drops. Render drops are a big one. And then there's another thing about it is, if you remember, Android's technically a Google property. Compose multi-platform, Kotlin multi-platform is a JetBrains property. Both Google and JetBrains founded the Kotlin Foundation, and they have ownership of Compose multi-platform and Kotlin multi-platform. And this is also another issue with it, is two bodies actually govern the same technology. So some parts of the technology are governed by Google, other parts are governed by JetBrains, and they usually try to keep their release cadences the same. But given some things that happen internally, I can't say, I don't know, but they end up publicly not having the same release cadence. So some things are behind in one version and ahead in another, and they become incompatible. So that also comes with the maturity of the ecosystem. Funnily enough, Google also has a second cross-platform mobile development kit called Flutter, with their own in-house language called Dart. So they also split time with that as well. Flutter came out 2013, 24. I definitely should have memorized these dates. But Flutter kind of dropped out of the public consciousness for a while and got put into the so-called Google graveyard. And then it got revived from the Google graveyard. And my joke for that is it's the first one to ever get revived. And it's been pretty good. They've gotten consistent updates. They've also started to target web with the WASM garbage collector proposal and stuff like that. So you can also write mobile dev and web dev with Flutter, which is also the same for Compose multi-platform and Kotlin multi-platform. There are some other niceties that Flutter does because they are directly supported by Google themselves. They have some features that other frameworks don't. The main one that I've heard praise all over is the immediate hot reloading feature directly in the Android emulator. So Flutter gets hot reload, so your dev speed can greatly increase. There are some things about Dart that I can answer, but there are also some things that I just really cannot. So I'm probably going to leave it at that for now. And I think this comes as no surprise to anybody that this is on this list. It's React Native. Welcome to the React world. You got React Native with JavaScript or TypeScript. Obviously, React is a very well-developed ecosystem that's for web, developed by Facebook, now called Meta. And they also gave us React Native, and a lot of just existing React code can just run on React Native. So you don't really need to change. So if your project was started out as a web app and you wanted to make it a mobile app as well, you don't have a lot of friction to get that up and running. So I think that's also a good choice if you have pre-existing code that you need to convert. But it's also just a good start when you're starting out fresh, because it's a massive ecosystem. It's a massive ecosystem. You have around what was the last release? It's like 110,000 viable NPM package repositories. If you have a problem, you can most definitely find a dependency that solves it for you. So that's also another benefit of choosing React. Also, the job pool for React is just bigger because not only is it very well renowned in the web space, it's also just been around for so long that people have been, and there's things that give it a lot of popularity, like the Windows 11 start screen being React Native. That one was funny. But there's no limit to what you have to choose. There are also others, like Rust. Rust has been growing in the public consciousness a lot recently, and there's stuff like Towery and Deoxys, which allow you to do mobile development and web development at the exact same time. A lot of these you'll come to see that it's a common trend in cross-platform to also just be like, we're already supporting two platforms, might as well just support a third. And so they all usually do web, mobile, and both mobile platforms. There are also a couple others that maybe some in the audience might know of, is with C#. There's Maui. I believe that's the successor to Xamarin. I think so. And then there's also stuff like native script and I'm blanking on the other one. It'll come back to me. And this is also not a definitive list. This list is not set in stone. A lot of languages nowadays are starting to gain support for cross-platform. Just recently, I think 2 weeks ago, there was a tweet from the official Swift Twitter of it being like, hey, we can now run Swift on Android. So there's also things like that. Languages that used to be native locked are starting to explore this cross-platform and quote-unquote multi-platform avenue as a way to have their talent pool expand their reach without actually having to learn new things. And finally, the final method is web or a progressive web app. Web is such a big technology these days, why not just make a web app but optimize the UI and the UX to either be mobile specific or be stuff like Flexbox and actually handle mobile UIs or adaptive UIs. And you can optimize like response time, accounting for like mobile data and stuff like that as well. But that's not the only thing that you can do with web apps. You don't have to be limited to just Safari or Google Chrome or Firefox. You can actually make what is called a progressive web app. A web app which still runs on the device's browser, but is installable as a separate app, as a standalone app that you can put on your home screen. And when you click on it, it actually opens up the browser in the background and actually makes the entire app, actually runs the entire app. And it's called a PWA for short. It came out in 2016, and it's a good way to upgrade all of your pre-existing web applications to just be mobile friendly. I won't say mobile first, but mobile friendly. And obviously, with the space of web technologies, you get a lot of choices. These were just the 4 I remembered off the top of my head. You get stuff like React, Vue, Svelte, Astro. You can also use like Angular or Ripple, which is a new one, or stuff like that. There's also Lynx, which is a web technology, cross-platform mobile technology as well, that came out from Tencent, not Tencent, no, sorry, the people behind TikTok. They also made their own. So there's also a lot of other web-based technologies out there that have now moved to mobile friendly or mobile first. And yeah, like obviously React's here as a double show from cross-platform, which is React Native. And I think there's plans for stuff like Vue and Svelte Native as well. I don't know how far they've gotten along, but if you've already learned how to like write React or write Vue or write Svelte the right way, why waste extra time learning how to write Swift or Kotlin when you can just make a progressive web app and get like 90 to 99% of the way there in the first place? So with all of those options, which to choose? Wow, I went overtime. I am so sorry. So which to choose? It's really just up to you. It's very project dependent. It's very skills dependent. If you're someone who already knows React and is very comfortable in React and also has like a 9-to-5 or is still a student and you don't want to learn something new in the free time and just want to make this really cool idea that you want to pour all your energy into, why not just choose React Native for the current stopgap and get like 90% of the way there? When you really come down to critical performance, you can always go to native, and a lot of other frameworks have ways to interact with native code. So if you ever need native functionality that is not in your cross-platform or in your web technology, then you can just touch native. There's also benefits to touching native. You get to be what I've heard quoted as a good platform citizen. So you get to follow the design choices and design paradigms of the platform. Swift UI is a big preacher of this. They are very opinionated. A lot of iOS apps look and feel like the other iOS apps. They all look the same. They all have that same feel, that same bounce effect, all that unified effect. And that's something that Swift and the Apple team have been pushing a lot, which is a unified ecosystem and to make everything look the same. And for their part, Google has been doing something similar with Material. Both Flutter and Compose follow Flutter. Follow Material's guidelines, and they have guidelines online that you can follow and see. And you can also follow Material for web. I've been told that Material for web does not look as good as it does for mobile, though. But I mean, at that point, that's personal preference of your UI. So really, it really is just up to you. It's the Wild West out there. Try something niche. Help them find bugs. Help them fix their problems. If you like, you could be the first power user of a technology, and that's really fun in some cases. Other times, it's very annoying, but that's your trade-off, right? And so I think, just to wrap it up, it's really up to you. Like I feel like I'm repeating myself, but it's very up to you. It's your choice. And I'm going to be honest, the way the internet is these days, it's a lot of flame wars and language bashing. If you're getting the job done, you're getting the job done. Like, you can always go and talk and have a discussion, argument about the technologies you choose, but at the end of the day, you need to get code out and get a product working. So I try to pay them no mind, but it doesn't help me sleep at night. So thank you for listening. This was supposed to be an hour, right? I kind of went over 30 minutes, but that gives us time to just have a little discussion, questions, pick my brain, pick Emilio's brain on like the whole development process. He's more into like the business side. But right before that, Kloob participation, if you have the app, you do need an account, and hopefully making an account is working. Uh-oh, it's not working? Oh no. What? Well, what is it? What is the error? Huh. Well. Yeah, I'm not sleeping tonight then. Just I'll have to fix that. But anybody else have questions, concerns, comments, critiques, criticism? Did I do good? Did I do bad? Please, I rely on validation. You did have a question though, didn't you? I saw you raise your hand. Yes. Yeah, that is a very good question. So, I don't know if you guys watch this YouTuber called Fireship. I really like his test of the Svelte 5 runes test, which is now most LLMs have an internet connection, and they start scraping docs and stuff for you while you're prompting them. So, I think in the near future, when web scraping while prompting gets better, I don't think that choice really changes, but I do understand the current market of like AI vibe coding and you need something that has a lot of training data out there. So I do think for newer devs, if you are going to end up relying on AI as a tool and want it to not hallucinate at you, yes, choosing older technology will probably warrant better results, but there are some caveats to that. Compose multi-platform as one of them, because it's based on Jetpack Compose, which has been out for 7, 8 years. Double check. Stop. For like a while now, they even market on their website for Compose multi-platform that it's AI ready, because there's so much Jetpack Compose stuff out there, and the Jetpack Compose versus Compose multi-platform is almost like a 99% match. There's like 1% of the API basically that's still missing and not there, but they go over the limitations on their website for that. And so there's also that avenue where basing a newer technology on an older one allows for the hallucinations to be like less prominent. They'll still happen. They will always still happen. But I think generally you will probably, if you're going to use AI as a tool, you probably want to pick the most popular, just so that the data pool and the data set is not as tainted or poisoned as what newer ones or even exist. Like that data set may not even exist for something that just came out like a week ago. It's a good question. Any others? No? Wow. I didn't have anything after this, so I guess we're just sitting here. Wait, Amelia, is the app working? What did he do? Oh. Yeah, the Wi-Fi is always a problem. Yeah, so I guess that's a good talking point. Yeah, network. A lot of, because you're with a physical device, this brings up a good point. Because you're with a physical device, you will also have to deal with some of the challenges that come with a physical device that can move locations, particularly when you're in a place that doesn't have the best internet connection and things expect that internet connection to be fast, and then it's not fast, and you just have a frozen app or an app that's stuck in loading. Especially when you're dealing with like high density data like images or video. So there's also those considerations to take into effect. And also, sometimes when a user sends you a bug and they're like, yeah, this happened, and then you're like, that didn't happen when I do it. And then you're asking like, okay, I see in the video they have 1 bar of service and it's LTE. And it's like, oh, how do I recreate that situation? And it's really annoying. And also, just generally speaking, the debugging experience with mobile dev is just usually more tedious than with web, particularly if you have a low-end machine. Emulation, it's great. Takes up a lot of resources. My Mac, like, I have 16 gigs of RAM, and I still occasionally freeze when I open up an Android emulator. So it's a lot. It requires you to have some decent hardware, and I can imagine someone with 8 gigs of RAM. It's not a good time, and I mean, Amelia can attest that he has 8 gigs of RAM, and it's not the best for him. So, but any other questions, comments, concerns? So, so Kloob is a. Do you have the slide deck? Do you want to put the slide deck up? I mean, I'm on the admin account. We already went over this.
Kloob is a management app for college clubs and local communities. So when it comes to resources and tools like budgeting for an organization, task management within your team, communicating and interfacing with your members, everything related to local community management, club management, and also discovery as well. So we found that it's often hard to find your local clubs or local communities in your area, and you kind of feel isolated, but this is a way to alleviate that. So find your hive is our motto, one of them. So, and also we're bees. So, yeah.
W audience plant. Realize this, is that the speed picture? We can't show that, man. We'll get DMCA'd. Just tweet it. Any other questions, comments, concerns? We don't know. He just shows up. Anyways. What'd you say?
I guess history about Kloob. It started off as a senior design project right before I graduated in 2023. It was called Event Ready, and I did it with some other friends. And at that time, I was running 2 organizations, more doing the on-site organization stuff, and it was painful. There was no platform to kind of help with student leaders, at least first-time student leaders. When you're joining or an e-board, it's most likely the first time that you're running a community. It's even harder on the president as well because, they have this sense of imposter syndrome. They don't really know how to lead or don't have the resources to do so. So I really wish that something like this existed back then, and that started the journey of, I guess, Event Ready into nVent. This is our first merch drop. Vintage piece now, since now we're called Kloob. So, yeah. Programming language wise, it started off as like Swift, a shitty MVP on Swift. And then I was like, Jaren, I need your help. And he was like, let's do Kotlin.
Yeah, so a bit of backstory about that was he came to me with a Swift MVP, and it was in a working state. It's what a minimum viable product is. And he was like, yeah, can you help me as CTO? And I was like, sure, I got nothing else going on. I'm jobless, might as well. And he gave me basically full reign of like what to choose. And I was like, I'm most familiar with Kotlin. I've been writing it probably most of my college, if not all of my college career and most of my high school career as well. It's the language I'm most proficient in, so I chose it. And I was like, well, I know Kotlin multi-platform's out, and I know Compose multi-platform's out. iOS is about to hit beta, and then, I took a little bit of procrastination, and iOS hit stable, and so now we're relying on stable technologies. And I was like, oh, I also get web for free. Web is in beta now. I get desktop for free. Desktop's in stable. This is me future planning, but I get all these things for free, and I don't have to do much extra work. And then it became a lot of extra work, but I don't find. I find it as just the cost of doing business. It's the cost of doing business with something like this kind of technology, and I'm willing to pay it. I think most of the team is as well. We've mostly been enjoying it, but there are some parts that are always just annoying, particularly like platform-specific stuff, integration with stuff like camera and stuff like the photo gallery. Stuff you would just assume would be standardized between operating systems. It's not. It will never be, unless Apple and Google start working together. But I think the world ends before that happens. Anyway. Yeah, I guess that's basically how it came to be. And then we also took some time to do the rebrand and all that stuff, and it was a good time to work on the rebrand because we just started a new code base, and it follows that one of my good friends told me that he read this research paper that every project, once it hits a certain number of lines of code, always ends up being a refactor. And for him, the metric that he read was 10,000 lines of code. Once a project hits 10,000 lines of code, you want to refactor it, you want to rewrite it. And I think when Emilio came to me, we just hit that threshold of I want to rewrite this. I want to do it properly. I don't want to just be here hacking it together while, yeah. I mean, he vibe coded, and it worked decently well. I mean, SwiftUI has been around for a while, but there are just some things that the LLMs get wrong because we are on SwiftUI 5.6. No, 5.5. I think 5.6 is in alpha right now. But there are things that changed in like 5.4 or 4.7 that LLMs just don't know. And you look on Stack Overflow, and the question from 2 weeks ago is like, yeah, they changed this like a month ago. It's like, great, cool, nice. So everything I've been doing is wrong. Fun. But yeah, there's also, I mean, that happens with almost every framework I've listed on that list. I don't think I've seen a single time when like, it just doesn't change at all. But that's kind of just the nature of software these days. So authentication on our app is actually done through our backend. We use Supabase. The original app was on Firebase, but we swapped to Supabase. And they give us a bunch of options for authentication. Currently, we just use email, but in the future, we hope to have stuff like Google Auth and Apple SSO and stuff like that. And it's things like that that also change with like the scope of your app. And I think right now we're okay with it just being email. I think it works the best. Everybody likes using their email, especially on like their phone. I don't have any of my sign-ons on my phone, but then again, I'm a CS student who only uses my laptop, so guess I'm in the minority. Uh, so we are using a, I guess they're considered source available. So Supabase provides us with those things, and we don't handle it with like Auth0 and stuff like that. But I believe they do use Auth0 under the hood. So it's just one less thing for us to worry about. And yeah, they're already integrated, they're tested. Like, I don't have to worry that when email authentication isn't working, it's either in the authentication code or it's in some other part of our code. It just it's just the everlasting job of an engineer to minimize surface area of where bugs can occur. So I think choosing something like that is just. I don't think Apple and Google impose that many regulations to begin with. I think the main. Oh. Ye- yeah, I get what you're saying. So, I mean, ethically, we don't do that. Yeah, so originally we used Firebase, and yeah, so we originally, it was on Firebase, and Firebase, per Google's part, really good, a lot of stuff, analytics, crash reports, all these things, but they did not have good multi-platform support, even though they have Firebase for iOS and Firebase for Android, and they have really good platform SDKs. But you look at the Google response forum from November of 2024, they're like, yeah, this is not on our short-term plan list. This is not on our long-term plan list. Um, yes, just use the native SDKs. And then like 4 months ago, in like Mayish to June, they're like, hey, we have a poll out. What is the most wanted thing in Firebase right now? And like 89% of the vote was multi-platform support. So we're just a bit too early to use Firebase still. So when we were working on the rewrite from Swift to Compose and Common Multi-Platform, we were like, we should probably find an alternative that has multi-platform support. And Supabase had multi-platform support, and it had all this other stuff, and it was pretty nicely managed, and it was like, why don't we just use Supabase? And we went with Supabase, and I don't think we've regretted it. I can't say for everybody else, but I haven't regretted it. It's pretty nice to work with. I rec so obviously do your own research and stuff like that, but I think indecision is the worst thing you can do. Once you choose something, stick with it for a while. Try to get through all of the hurdles that you were expected to get through, like in their tutorials and stuff. If you keep running into more problems, yeah, swap, try looking at better alternatives. Or if it's just a no-go, like for us with Firebase not having multi-platform support. But I think giving it some time to settle in, like there's always going to be learning challenges. But for us, it was from the get-go, I think we lucked out on choosing good technologies. Obviously, not everybody is as lucky as us, but I mean, it's kind of just how software development goes, I guess. I mean, I don't know if I can give a better answer than that, sorry. So I think, yeah, we have 8 minutes left. I don't want Elaine to be mad, so I think we're going to call it there. Don't forget to scan the QR code to get your attendance leaderboard points, and thank you all for coming.